So I guess I'm also curious about some of your thoughts on social media, and I know that you were kind of early to Twitter, and now there's Clubhouse and there's all these other new sort of platforms and the creator economy. Did you expect Clubhouse to get so big?
Well, I mean, so big is an interesting. I mean, there are a lot of signups,
Right, right.
but I mean, it does feel like, given the way they've growth hacked their way to stealing all my contacts, and I mean, I guess I gave them permission for it, but um, and everybody that I've ever met in my whole life signing up, but most of these people don't go on.
Hmm.
So their percentage of users who regularly make it a point to join is um, fairly low. I think you're seeing two things, right? There's one Clubhouse behavior where it's like, I'm going to log into Clubhouse because I know there's going to be good stuff there and I'm open to what I find. And then there's another behavior that's like, oh, I saw a conversation that I'm interested in and I need to log into Clubhouse to use it. Um, that's two different things, right? In that latter case, Clubhouse is just Zoom, right? It isn't a discovery platform. It's just the tool I need to download to listen to the conversation I want to listen to. The vast majority of people who are using Clubhouse are that. It's just that they found a thing and what do I have to download to get it? And then if they don't find anything, they won't use it. That is probably my favorite thing about the platform itself, is that it is fairly easy just to start a conversation and to get the discoverability and to just start talking. Um, that being said, that ease is also what, to me, makes the overall quality of the conversation on the platform fairly low. I mean, if you think about it, the two closest comparisons are podcasts and conference panels. And Clubhouse is a definitively worse version of each, right? It's like a podcast that has no story structure, no editing, in which the audience takes a much larger percentage of the content than the curated experts. Now there's two different groups, right? It's like, look, if you are an aspirational founder with an idea sort of outside the ecosystem, and this is your one and only shot to have a conversation with, I don't know, Mark Andreessen or whoever, then you think it's the coolest thing in the world. If you are a seed or Series A backed founder, with kids and busy things going on in your life, and you are looking for the maximum amount of information for your minutes spent, it's way worse than a podcast. And it's demanding of your time, right? Like, you can't time shift it to your 5:30 a.m. bike ride or workout or what have you, or and so that's a real limiting kind of factor. um so yeah, I think that earlier behavior, that it isn't going to be as mass appeal. Look, particularly when everybody gets out and about, right? I mean, you even see it now, actually. I mean, if you log into Clubhouse and you look at the numbers of the attendees of events where, like, Elon Musk is not there, it's definitively lower than it was a few months ago in the middle of the winter, for sure. Um, and so, what will be its place in the ecosystem? I think it's probably going to be more platform like. I think they'll have to build sort of more tools. Um, I think there'll be some paid tools. I think you'll have some people sort of making a full-time living, sort of, doing subscription access to rooms and stuff like that. The one thing I would say though is that platforms like Clubhouse and Substack need to solve for the per publication fee. Because look, there are some newsletters that I think are particularly interesting, but there's a theoretical limit to how many newsletters I could subscribe to for $10 a month. I mean, if you think about like, what does Netflix cost me now? 18 bucks or whatever, like, and the value that Netflix brings me versus an individual newsletter, its pricing is sort of way out of whack. I mean, there might be one or two people where you're like, I'm really, in on subscribing to that person. But I think you have a couple of issues. One is that people are more likely to pay for water cooler stuff, where like, oh, everyone's following Fred Wilson's blog, and so I need to follow that too because everybody else does, right? Regardless of whether it's directly relevant to the kind of business that I'm, going into. But what that does mean is that there is some media content, some investigative journalism, and all of that sort of stuff that like will struggle to get funded because it's just really good reporting, or it's a perspective from somebody who isn't on the inside of the tech community, that doesn't have the biggest following, but is still important. And if we're just monetizing only sort of water cooler personalities, then a disproportionate percentage of the revenues are going to go to these types of people. I think it should be much more based on like a, class pass style model where, hey, you know what? I'm happy to pay $10, $20, $30, some tiered thing for my minutes of access, but distribute it to where I happen to listen, right? And if I discover a new room on Clubhouse that is really good and I actually, spend some time on it, give them most of the money that I put in for the $30 of subscription that I was paying, right? Like don't put a barrier to say, here's the person that you've never heard of. It's going to cost you $10 to see their thing. So I think there's some real issues with how they're sort of have designs on monetizing that I think will just have too many water coolers, and you'll have this like insidery group that just feels like they have to follow a certain people, and then a long tail of interesting writers that are really struggling to get, monetized. That's a Substack issue. I think it's a Clubhouse issue.
Would you
Uh,
say that's a issue in the broader creator economy, whether that's Patreon or YouTube or what have you?
well, it's an issue where I have to make a new subscription decision to every, it's less so in an ad supported way. I
Right.
mean, and it's less so, for algorithmically driven platforms, right? Where, you know, TikTok, you can go from, zero to hero very quickly if you have sort of high quality stuff. Um, the follower model sort of reinforces existing networks, right? Like, um, it's not, you always get sort of a new batch of people, but if you look at the most followed people on Clubhouse, 2/3 of them are the most followed or most influential in other circles already. It's really not sort of this open meritocracy, I think. Um, so it depends on how you get sort of monetized.